So, many of you have seen the video where they talk about how the companion cube has a dead body in it. If you haven't, I will link it in the description. And I have several problems with the video. I'm gonna pull it up and I'm gonna play through it and point out the flaws in it. So let's let me pull it up. So here it is. It's a long video. It's 12 minutes long. So
For deranged loneliness on tube.
Everyone's favorite rhombohedron has a scary little secret inside of it. And no, I'm not referring to this guy's penis.
So it's by game theory. And so here's the demo of the music. Very long intro, but I'm gonna play through this and then let you hear what he's saying, and then say what my problem is with it.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, determined to be the first show ever to talk about Portal without once mentioning cake. Wait, I just blew it, didn't I? Damn it. Let's call a spade, shall we? The companion cube is a box with parts on it, and yet despite being an inanimate object that appeared for a fraction of the first Portal game, the gaming community instantly fell in love.
Well, it was a pretty important thing in that, and that's true, just in the faction thing, and it's pretty awesome, because it's adorable. And come on, look at it, how can you not love this thing? It's cute.
Myself included, without speaking, without even moving, the weighted companion cube, which by all definition should qualify as an item, quickly rose through the ranks of gaming's all-time most memorable characters. Take that, Rystar! Screw you, Chuck Rock! You're no match for my parallelopiped pal! We grew to love this rectangular prism so much that we let it into our beds, let it chill our drinks, and let it all up in our feminine underparts. But perhaps we were too quick to let it plaster our privates. Maybe our passion for this hexahedral ombre was a little misplaced. We grew overly attached because we were alone and desperate for a friend in the testing chambers of Aperture Science. But in our haste, we didn't bother to ask questions. We didn't stop to notice the odd coincidences. What do we really know about the nature of these cubes? What black secrets are hidden behind those pink hearts? Well, first, we need to know why we love the companion cube so much. Back in the 1950s, when psychology was still interesting because there were no limitations on human testing, those were the days, Donald Hebb placed volunteers into extreme isolation, leaving them in small, empty rooms with goggles and headphones to block out sensory input. The test was supposed to last 42 days. Test subjects barely made it 4, as they quickly descended into...
You know, I think I could last more than 4 days. I think I could last the entire 42 days, like as long as I was fed and, like, you know, allowed to go to the bathroom and stuff. I have lived in solitude for more or less my entire life. I don't have friends. I don't trust human beings anymore. So I can be in solitude, and I won't go crazy. Well, I should say I won't go any crazier than I already am.
Unable to think clearly, so lost in deprivation that they failed basic skills tests. They started to have vivid visual and auditory hallucinations, ranging from the room filling with dogs to feeling their arm getting hit with pellets fired from a miniature imaginary rocket ship. In short, the Aperture Science testing would truly push subjects to their psychological limits as they wandered alone in room after room with no end in sight.
You know, given how much I love Portal, I'd rather do that almost anything.
Humans truly are social creatures, and
Not
studies
me.
have shown that lonely people are much more likely than connected people to believe that inanimate objects have emotions and intentions. By the time you tell them,
Well, that's not true. I actually do have friends. I just choose not to have friends because in the past I've been betrayed so much that I just choose not to have friends because I just don't trust humans in general. It's just objects won't lie to you. Objects won't hurt you unless you are being really stupid with them. Um, and objects, they can have whatever personality you want to give to them. Their name, personality, anything, more or less. That's why I prefer being with my laptop and my QB more than anyone.
player reach Chamber 17, we're so ready for companionship, we'll give it to anything, including a glorified storage crate. And if you think back to the Tom Hanks movie Castaway, same thing happened there. Wilson, the bloody-faced volleyball, was the film's version of the companion cube, giving Tom Hanks someone, anyone to interact with while in isolation on the island. So basically, the companion cube is just a lovable little pile of parts that happen to be in the right time at the right place. Then what
So, well, the companion cube may actually just be the perception of it talking and being friendly and something different. That actually might be something due to the perceived psychological impact of being in the isolation for a long time, because that will happen if you are getting really lonely. You will want to start you will start hallucinating things sometimes. Not all the times, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that because it's different, you probably think that, oh, it's special, I must make some friendship with this. So, and you'll get attached to the object, which is why we most likely fell in love with the companion cube.
reasons could we possibly have to distrust our cuddly little cube? Well, would you believe me if I said that the weight inside those weighted companion cubes came from the bodies of failed test subjects, the
No, I
dead
wouldn't.
and dying predecessors of Chell? Let's look at the evidence. What initially prompted this theory is the achievement you receive when you drop your
So here is where I start having problems with this video.
companion cube into the incinerator during the first game. The name of the achievement is fratricide, a term denoting the act of killing your brother. It seems like an odd...
Well, you developed a companionship with the companion cube. You are that word they're saying towards this. They're saying that, oh, because they're saying that it's your brother, like it's because they're saying that the weight inside is like the past test subject, so that, oh, it's your brothers and sisters kind of a thing. No, it doesn't necessarily mean like that. Like, it could mean like you've developed such a close relationship with the companion cube that it's that it might as well be your brothers or sisters, just like your test subjects. The test subjects aren't necessarily all Chell's brothers and sisters. They're yeah, so you can't really say that fratricide is applying just to brothers and sisters in this instance, because in this case, if it was fratricide, then Chell's brother or sister would be in the companion cube and she would have trusted into that. So, and that's highly unlikely. And so the word fratricide can't really that this point's not really that solid.
choice of words until you consider that the thousands of test subjects captive at Aperture, the ones who used to live in the large boxes visible at the start of the second game, are just like your brethren and may just have ended up downgraded to a smaller, more disposable box. Well, first, we know it's physically possible. Our Metroid Morph Ball episode showed that a human can fit into spaces much smaller than zero point 0.1 cubic meters, and without even breaking into pixel measurements, it's easy to tell that a companion cube is significantly larger than any version of the Morph Ball. So physically cramming a human into a cube is absolutely possible, but is it actually what's happening? To find out, we need to examine the way GLaDOS speaks about the companion cube.
The Enrichment Center reminds you that the weighted companion cube will never threaten to stab you and, in fact, cannot speak. In the event that the weighted companion cube does speak, the Enrichment Center urges you to disregard its advice. If it could talk, and the Enrichment Center takes this opportunity to remind you that it cannot, it would tell you to go on without it because it would rather die in a fire than become a burden to you.
Now,
So that point, where they're saying that, okay, the Enrichment Center reminds you that the weighted companion cube will never threaten to stab you, and in fact cannot speak. That's because it's going back to the idea that, oh, you were going insane. You're not going to be, if you're going to be hallucinating that the thing is talking, and it might actually, like for instance, Ratman. That quote may have been actually just you know what I mean, an idea just hinting towards the existence of Ratman, who in fact did imagine the companion keep speaking to him. So that's not quite solid there too.
GLaDOS is not our friend, and is far from a reliable source of information in the first game. In fact, most of what she says is false and meant to mislead Chell. Thus, her insistence that the cubes are A, unable to talk, and B, should be ignored if they do, make it seem like the reverse is true, that they may be able to talk and that their advice should be heeded. That's certainly the experience former Aperture employee turned test subject Doug Ratman experienced. In the Portal comics, Ratman is shown to have conversations with the companion cube he carries strapped to his back, with the cube literally giving him helpful advice. In fact, the cube's advice is the one thing that keeps him alive. It even warns him against taking 2 pills labeled as diaprazidone, supposedly antipsychotic medication, except that the real medication would be named Zyprazidone, without the A. Careless typo made by Val, or perhaps another Aperture test that the cube was aware of. While under its effects, the cube no longer talks, and Ratman almost gets himself killed without its advice. Seems like...
See, if you keep reading the Ratman comics, you will realize that anything that the cube says is actually by what Ratman said he's thinking. Because you see the cube saying things like, that, okay, the medicine's starting to work, and then when the medicine does start to work, the companion cube falls silent, proving that, like, not only proving, but leaning towards, pretty strong towards the idea that the companion cube doesn't actually, well, as far as Ratman goes, the companion cube isn't actually talking to him, it's all in his head.
GLaDOS would have a vested interest in keeping people ignoring this useful source of information. And speaking of Ratman, throughout the games you see many of his ranty scribblings on the walls. In his first chamber, you see cubes over the faces of various pictures. What many have assumed is just schizophrenic hallucinations or a fixation on the cube may be something completely different. Notice he hasn't placed
here's where I have one of the biggest problems in here.
That's the basis of one gender, but both men and women. The term objectum sexual is given to people who literally fall in love with inanimate objects. Like this woman who dumped her bow and arrow fiancé Lance to literally marry
I actually know this lady personally.
the Eiffel Tower. Or this woman who married the Berlin Wall. Talk about your awkward wedding night. Now, if Ratman was indeed in love with the cube and suffering from objectum sexual, he would...
Okay. Suffering, I find that personally extremely offensive, because I myself am an objecting sexual person, and I just want to say that what he's saying about personifying male and female, they don't do that, that's wrong. That's wrong. I know people that do that both. They personify it as both male and female. I personify certain objects as both male and female. Just depends on the circumstance. For instance, I am in love with the companion cube. I'm not really afraid to admit that. I actually have feelings for this thing, and I personify it usually as a male, but there are times when I'm like, okay, the companion cube could be female. So, as an objectum sexual, I can solidly say that his point there is wrong.
Associate the cube with one specific sex, not plastering its picture over multiple genders. Additionally, notice that the calendar is of the Girls of Aperture Science, meaning that these pictures are of people who have worked at the company, Ratman's friends, his co-workers, people he loved and cared about. If they were dead and shoved into cubes, it would make sense that he would put cube pictures over them.
And here's another problem. If he's just finding pictures that he's finding around the place, where else would he get any pictures? Where else would he get pictures? The only pictures he could ever find would be in the facility, and 99% of the time, that would be Aperture Science employees that would be in the facility. The pictures. He can't get any other pictures. So it makes sense why he taped it over Aperture Science employees, because those are the only pictures he can get his hands on. Doesn't necessarily mean that the people are shoved into the cubes.
Top of them and have hearts drawn around them. And let's not overlook the message written here either. Quote, the weighted companion cube does speak. I'm not hallucinating, you are. Then in Portal 2, GLaDOS adds,
I think that one was about to say, I love you. They are sentient, of course. We just have a lot of them.
Again, making allusion to the fact that the cubes may be able to speak, but more importantly, describing the sentience of the cubes. To be sentient means having the ability to feel and perceive. Sentient characters also display desire, will, and personality. So to say that the cube is...
So, they're saying that... You had to listen to the next part first.
Sentient would differentiate it significantly from the likes of a turret, for example, which may at first appear to have feelings and consciousness, but are in fact just programmed to...
Okay, this is one of the worst problems I have with this. Programmed. The turrets and all the things are programmed to feel and perceive. So, tell me this. How do we feel? Aren't we not pre-programmed to feel this? We technically don't have any free will. Everything is just a product of the chemical and the chemistry and the physics and just the way the world forces the electrons from the ATP to carry to produce energy, and then the neurons form connections and all that kind of stuff. But everything we perceive is in our own head. There is no way to actually see if reality is actually reality, because everything we know about the world around us is in our head. In a way, we're like robots in the beginning. We have a base set of instructions, just like assembly code, kind of, and empty and null. I don't know much of programming, but you know what I mean, like the null sectors where it'll fill the data in. For instance, show a new object to a baby, say, oh baby, what's this? They don't know what it is. But after several times of stimulating, they'll eventually learn what it is, because they're comparing what this is to the previous instances of what they have learned it to be, and what the mom or dad or whoever's teaching it, the baby, what it is. They'll connect it together. So in a way, we are pre-programmed. We are programmed to do whatever we do. Like everything is based, like if I see I'm hurting myself right now, why am I feeling pain? Well, I'm applying pressure to the pain sensors in my finger. That releases a chemical signal, which gets transformed into an electrical signal, which goes to my brain, which in my brain it compares it. It gets sent to a particular part of the brain, which processes the information and compares it to previous instances of where this was, where the pain was, how strong the pain was, where the like if I should pull away or not, and then decides to execute a particular decision. So we're more or less programmed, and it's definitely possible to create a robot just as smart or even smarter than a human is with the same emotions. You can make a robot with emotions, because our brain is all just circuitry. Why can't we make it in robots? Because it just interacts with the world. So when you're referring to sentience can apply to anything that can feel, perceive, have desire, have will and personality, regardless of whether it was pre-programmed or not. Because if we're saying that we're sentient, and we're pre-programmed, then robots should be sentient because they're pre-programmed and stuff. So that's a huge problem I have here. No.
Respond to various stimuli in very specific ways. A human inside a cube, meanwhile, would definitely qualify as a sentient creature.
Oh well, we have warehouses full of the things. Absolutely worthless. I'm happy to get rid of them.
Throughout the entirety of both games, GLaDOS only uses words like worthless and useless to describe one thing: the value of human life.
Remember before when I was talking about smelly garbage standing around being useless? That was a metaphor. I was actually talking about you.
So not only has she opened up the possibility that the cubes can talk repeatedly, she refers to them using the same language she implements when talking about other human test subjects.
She's most likely saying that they're worthless because you're developing an attachment to them, and therefore wants to make you feel bad.
What she's saying and how she's saying it gives a strong indication that the cubes may be more than meets the eye. Then there's the Disintegration sound clip, when GLaDOS automatically decides that she wants to bump one of these cubes off. Listen to it a few times. Can you hear buried in amongst the metallic clang a cry for help? A last plea from someone who has just been euthanized?
Well, people tend to hear stuff in audio clips several times, and it's been proven several times that this isn't the case, that they hear messages in backwards playing audio and all that kind of thing. And honestly, I can't hear anything in that. Like, other than the fact I can hear, now only I'm hearing the little part of it, like the radio, you can hear that in there. But no, I can't hear a human voice. It's the I'm gonna play this record backwards thing, and I'm just gonna hear random voices that aren't really there. How many times has that happened in history? Thousands of times. The only one I'm actually compelled about is Stairway to Heaven, because it actually makes sense that one little part where it says, yes, there are two paths you can go by, but in the long run, that part, if you play it backwards, it's satanic. It makes sense because in this forward you can go to the two paths you can go by. You can go to Stairway to Heaven, or you can take the other way to hell. No, I mean, like, you can say Highway to Hell, but I mean, that's AC/DC, so that wouldn't go. But you know what I mean.
By an AI with no regard for the waste of human life. And finally, perhaps the most bizarre and unexplained coincidence of all, unlike every other item in the game, a companion cube is never faced with the threat of a material emancipation drill. The material
Here. Never? Are you fucking kidding me? Just go to the user-made test chambers. Even the one I made, you have to avoid pushing it into an emancipation grill. And if you put it through an emancipation grill, it'll fizzle, and no dead body will drop out, as this thing will say.
Application grill, or grid depending on who you ask, is a particle barrier set up to disintegrate any unapproved contraband leaving the testing chamber. Weighted storage cubes, edgeless safety cubes, discouragement redirection cubes, and things that don't have cube in their name. Basically any non-organic materials that are meant for that room and that room only. Why does this matter? Well, we've already discussed the companion cube's demise in the first portal, that unforgettable incinerator scene where our cube friend is in the fiery furnace before we can even get close to the particle grid. Then in Portal 2, the one and only chamber in the entire game with a broken particle field just so happens to be the same one as the one and only chamber where you can interact with a companion cube? Coincidence? I think not. And why does it matter? Remember that organic test subjects are cleared to pass through these barriers, while cubes are not. So if these boxes did indeed contain the remains of humans lost under the guise of scientific progress, should a companion cube pass through, the exterior box would disappear, leaving only the curled up human inside.
Exactly. And that doesn't happen if you shove it through if you shove this through the user-made test chambers. There's no dead body in the companion cube. There's no dead body in there.
In other words, the companion cube is people. So the next time an evil, dishonest AI presents you with a cute box and tells you to become friends with it, think twice. Science has no mercy. But hey.
So, yeah. Do you see my point here? Do you see my point how the companion cube doesn't have a dead body in it? I just, disproved what every single thing he said, either by logic, reason, or actually pointing things out in the game. I disproved his biggest point by just pointing out the user-made test chambers. Has he even played a user-made test chambers? And shove a cube in there, shove a companion cube in there, and it doesn't fizzle. It will fizzle, but no dead body will fall out. And that too, he's saying organic materials cleared to pass, but nothing. So what? Are you calling the portal gun organic? Yes, the portal gun's organic. No, that won't happen unless you're my persona, which is the portal gun wolf, and even then, it's an android wolf. So, just no. It doesn't have a dead body. Chill your nips. Keep calm and portal on. Seriously, keep calm and make friends with the companion cube.